on the West Coast, specifically up in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. If it's a clear day, you can even see Mount Rainier from this location. That is, of course, Seattle, Washington. The 23rd ranked Illinois Fighting Illini go on the road to face the purple and gold of the Huskies, who are 4.5-point favorites, by the way. The over-under, 54.5, Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, over on the Big Ten Network. It is the 12th all-time meeting between the Illini and the Huskies. They haven't met since a home-and-home in 2013 and 2014, where the Huskies won both of those meetings. Both teams are coming off their second loss of the year. Of course, Illinois 2 weeks ago before the bye week, losing at home to Ohio State. And, of course, Washington losing on the road 24-7 to Michigan last week. This feels like one of the more evenly matched football games of the week. And this feels like the varsity version of Rutgers and Purdue. This feels like that matchup, just with better talent. I think you've got two good quarterbacks, you've got two good offenses, and the defenses can be a little bit suspect as well. So I think you could see teams move the football up and down the field in the shadow of the Space Needle out there as well. It's going to be a lot of pressure on these defenses to come up with stops. Washington is 7th in the country in explosive plays. That's 20-plus yards this season. They've got 47 of them. That's a lot. Illinois is 32nd in the country, 5th in the Big Ten with plays over 40 yards this season. They got 9 of those. Illinois and Washington defenses rank in the triple digits as far as available yards. If a drive starts at the 20, you got 80 yards to go. So, they've allowed a lot of that 80 yards, I think, throughout a lot of these drives as well. Washington ranks in the top 15 in offensive available yards. Illinois is somewhere in the 40s and 50s. So I think that these defenses got to be ready to play. Aaron Henry, the defensive coordinator on the Illinois side. Ryan Walters, of course, taking on his former team that he was the defensive coordinator for on the Washington sideline. They have a mutual opponent. They have a mutual loss, if you're a believer in that kind of thing. Ohio State. I thought Illinois showed a lot more in what they could do offensively in their matchup against the Buckeyes than the Huskies did. But they had a lot of self-inflicted errors that prevented that game from being a little bit closer. I think when I look at this matchup, this is a quarterback duel, man. This game seems to come down to which one of these signal callers is just going to go out there and make the play when it needs to be made, who's going to be able to convert on third downs a lot more, who's going to be able to engineer more successful drives for their respective offense. Of course, Damon Williams for Washington, Luke Altmaier for the Illini. They are both top 5 in completion percentage in the Big Ten, passing yards, yards per attempt, and passing yards per game. So statistically, these are two of the very best quarterbacks that this conference has to offer. Now, they're different quarterbacks. Okay, earlier in Luke Altmaier's career, maybe he was running around a lot more. Now he works a lot more from the pocket. He's a lot more comfortable throwing the ball down the field to the Hank Beatties of the world, the Colin Dixons of the world, the Hudson Clements of the world on this year's Illinois team. Whereas Damon Williams, he likes to get outside the pocket. He likes to freelance. He likes to create. Dare I say, he maybe even likes to play a little backyard football. And when he gets into those types of situations, it becomes difficult for the defense to be able to contain him. Last week, Michigan was able to keep him inside the pocket. Now, Damon was making some pretty good throws from inside the pocket, but eventually he kind of crumbled because that's not the role he was meant to play for 60 minutes. He's got to get outside the pocket. He's got to create plays. If you keep him in the pocket, and if I'm Aaron Henry, I got to find every way to keep number 2 from inside the pocket and not to get to the outside. If that kind of happens, you're able to get him into that situation, you can have some success against this Washington team right now. They need to find a way to replicate what Michigan was able to do. But even then, I'm not overly confident about Illinois' defensive backs against guys like Denzel Boston and Desmond Roebuck, the top 2 receivers for this Washington team. Illinois, 119th in FBS and coverage grade according to PFF. Only Rutgers has a worse coverage grade. And you can say, oh, that Indiana game, that was certainly a black mark on this season for this group. But, I mean, Purdue was able to move the football. USC was able to move the football. So it wasn't just that one game, and they're playing excellent in every other game. So it's been against a variety of opponents for the Illini this season. They've given up the 4th most passing yards in the Big Ten. You look at Washington and their secondary. You look at the Takario Davis, Ephesians Prysock, even Alex McLaughlin back there at safety, and now matching up against Illinois' receivers. Illinois, I like what they have, but I love what Washington has with Denzel Boston on the outside. I think he can create more big plays down the field than maybe the guys in Illinois can. But we'll see. It's going to be a really fun battle, I think, to see this thing all unfold. Michigan had a lot of success chipping away and leaning as far as the run game is concerned. Caden Fagan and Kaleo Valentine are both going to be healthy for the orange and blue this week. So maybe if early in the contest you go back and forth, because I think if you continue to go back and forth, I think that favors somebody like Washington. Even if Washington gets behind in this game, Denzel Boston, Damon Williams and this offense has shown the ability, get down 20-0 to Maryland, getting down 10-0 to Rutgers, to be able to come back in the game. So maybe Illinois be like, we got to run the ball a little bit to slow this sucker down. And that's where you lean on Fagan. That's where you lean on Valentine. That's where you lean on Aiden Lawfrey. That's where you lean on this running back room. And we'll see if this Illinois offensive line can stand up to what Washington has on the other side of the coin. Michigan certainly was able to have a lot of success running the ball. 40 carries, 187 yards in that matchup. Washington, boy, they need Carver Willis and John Mills to play left tackle and left guard. Their backup left tackle sounds like he's going to be out for an extended period of time. And the offensive line injuries have kind of gone hand in hand with running back Jonah Coleman maybe not being as productive. Jed Fish is hopeful that Willis and Mills are going to be able to play. They need to play. Plain and simple, flat out. If Willis is not able to go, boy, Gabe Ackas coming off the edge could be an absolute game record. 20 pressures this season, 11 hurries, 5 sacks. That's one guy. If Illinois, I've said it multiple times, if they're going to try to replicate what Michigan was able to do, they need to be able to not only get a pass rush consistently on Damon Williams, but they need to get a contained pass rush. Maybe not rushing so much way up the field so he can step up in the pocket and go, or maybe not kind of cutting things off a little bit too narrow so he can get to the outside and maybe run. You need to try to be strategic in how you're rushing the passer against an athletic quarterback like someone like Damon Williams. So, since the offensive line injuries up front, Coleman has rushed for only 100 yards just twice this season and averaging 3.1 yards per carry over the last 3 games, which is when you've seen those injuries. Maryland, Rutgers, and Michigan. Illinois is 59th in the country against the run, according to the PFF grades, 10th in the Big Ten against the run. So it's going to come down to which defense can kind of hold strong at key moments in the game. And I think it's going to come down to which quarterback can consistently make the throws, especially in the fourth quarter. Which offense is going to be able to really step up when it really matters. I can't wait to see this game. I think there's going to be movement up and down the field from Husky Stadium in Seattle. Boy, okay, so if you like offense, I think that might be a good game for you to watch in the 3:30 window. Okay? If you like defense, if you like old school Big Ten football, Minnesota and Iowa is what you were born to watch in this window. The Floyd of Rosedale is going to be on the line. And both these teams are going to bring the bacon to Iowa City. God, I love this game. I love that rivalry trophy. I love everything old school Big Ten football that is Minnesota and Iowa. It is the 119th all-time meeting between the Gophers and the Hawkeyes. Minnesota leads the series 63-53 in 2 ties. P.J. Fleck, just 1 win, over Iowa in his career. A 12-10 victory the last time they came to Kinnick Stadium in 2023. Iowa, 19-5 since 2001 against the Gophers. Last season, Iowa dominated Minnesota on the ground en route to a 31-14 victory. Now, here's the thing for Minnesota. I talk about tough, physical, and old school Big Ten type of feel for this game between the black and gold and the maroon and gold. But Before last week, this was an offense that when they were having success, they were putting it into the air a lot more with quarterback Drake Lindsay. And I think like the passing game is a part of this contest that Minnesota could have the edge on. But more on that here a little bit later. They rushed for 186 yards. They dominated the line of scrimmage against Nebraska. But this is going to be a more difficult challenge going up against a really good defensive line with Aaron Graves in the middle, Max Llewellyn, Ethan Hurkett, and company. I mean, it's a Phil Parker defense. They're going to be honest. They're going to be disciplined. And they're going to wreak havoc, especially up front. Carson Shire is a linebacker that's been in this program, that's been in the system for multiple years, and he's just an Iowa linebacker, and that might be the biggest compliment of them all. Hey, he's just an Iowa defensive player. I mean, these guys are awesome every year. It really doesn't matter who's wearing the uniforms up there. Darius Taylor is healthy now after running for 148 yards last week. So I think that's kind of where I want to start with this preview. Can Minnesota get this run game going? I don't know. It's a little bit of a question coming into this game because the Gophers do have some confidence following last week. But Iowa is playing with a lot of confidence here in the middle of the season defensively as well. Iowa is giving up less than 100 rush yards per game. That's fifth in the Big Ten in rush defense. And then I think on the back end where you have Drake Lindsay that's throwing the ball, a redshirt freshman. How is the redshirt freshman going to handle this environment at Kinnick Stadium? This is the first real big road test for Minnesota. Okay? So they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's certainly in this one as it pertains to Mr. Lindsay and really being able to handle the environment. I suppose they went on the road to Columbus at Ohio State earlier this season, but I think that this is going to be a much more competitive game than that one certainly will be. So, but when we look at the secondary for Iowa, Deshaun Lee and Xavier Wampa are coming off games against Penn State where they both had interceptions. So if Minnesota does struggle to run the football and then they go to the air, I think you have guys that are playing better in the secondary now this season, like the aforementioned Deshaun Lee, like a TJ Hall, a Cohen Entringer that's in there as well, that I think could make life difficult for this Minnesota passing attack as well. So that's a big question. What can Minnesota get going offensively? I think if anything, they're going to have a better chance to get the passing game going, and then maybe that's going to open up some run lanes with Darius Taylor as well. Now to the other side. Now Iowa, of course, has not been known for offensive prowess. Even on this year's team, they do not have good wide receivers. I mean, let's just put it as it is. Let's call a spade a spade. This is not going to be a team that's going to consistently beat you down the field. Okay? So that part, I think, to Iowa hasn't changed. But there's just one more layer that you have to deal with when you face this Hawkeyes team. And it's Mark Gronowski and his running ability. Iowa really hasn't had a mobile quarterback like this, but man, are they taking full advantage. It was the big runs it was 130 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns last week against Penn State that carried and propelled Iowa to that 25-24 victory over the Nittany Lions at Kinnick Stadium. It's just, you know, you got Kamari Moulton in there. You've got Xavier Williams in there. You've got the best run-blocking offensive line in the entire country. And then you just add on Mark Gronowski on top of it. Minnesota's got to have eyes on him at all times. You cannot get lost. You cannot get baited in. And I think that's where Iowa's really able to generate a lot of success. When they get the interior run game going with the aforementioned Moulton, with Williams, with this running back crew right now, and you go up the middle, you go up the middle, you go up the middle, and now all of a sudden you fake it up the middle. Gronowski pulls and goes around the edge when everybody's kind of biting to the inside. So Minnesota needs to stay honest. And that's, I think, where the fun and the play calling really comes with Tim Lester, because now if people on the outside for Minnesota are more honest and you got spies on 11, now you can kind of – now that allows you to run the ball maybe a lot better when the eyes of the defense are on the quarterback maybe instead of the running back. So I'm really curious to see how the play calling really is mixed in, I think, with Iowa in this game. Iowa and Minnesota both in the top 15 in the country in least explosive play. So, and that's probably was obvious coming into this game, but you're not going to get big plays down the field. You're just not. You're going to have to stick with it. Okay, you could be behind 7 points in the game. You could be behind 10 points in the game. But, you know, the more you kind of try for, like if you're Minnesota and you get behind 10-0 and you get behind 13-3 or something like that, you might be considering the success that they've had with the downfield passing game at times this season. You might be a little bit encouraged to be able to try those deep shots. But maybe that's what Iowa wants to be able to bait you into to be able to force some turnover. So I'm not saying you have to run it 50 times in a game. I'm just saying, you know, you got to go with the 7-yard out. You got to go with kind of methodically moving the football down the field to see. And it's going to be very interesting to see who's going to be able to make a play. Like this game, I think, really favors Iowa, especially being at Kinnick Stadium. I mean, watch out. Like this has all the markings of a really close game, back and forth, tough, physical, low-scoring, defensive battle. Caden Weegan hitting the big play. That's just the feeling. That's a gut feeling that I get when I look at this. This Iowa Minnesota game right now. If Iowa can limit or even shut down the Minnesota passing game, I think it gives them a lot more comfort to be able to really win this game, maybe even by double digits and cover that spread in this contest. But if Minnesota can generate some passing success early in this game, and maybe even if the Golden Gophers can get out to a 7-3 lead, a 13-3 lead, now that forces Iowa to maybe get out of their comfort zone a little bit. That's when you play a team like an Iowa, when you play a team with a Michigan that just, they thrive. I say this, but Iowa came back from 11 down against Penn State last week. They came down from being down against Rutgers. Like, this is not your typical Iowa team maybe where if they get down, they stay down. But I will say that I think Minnesota can be in a more comfortable situation and maybe get Iowa out of their comfort zone. Just because Iowa has to get out of their comfort zone doesn't mean they can't do it. But I think Minnesota could definitely be in the advantage if they get ahead in this game, obviously. If Minnesota can contain the run game, that's a big thing because Iowa can't really push the ball down the field. Okay, and then you kind of look at the secondary with Coy Parrish, Kerry Brown, and some of these corners on the outside. I think Minnesota has the advantage out there. That's got to be, I mean, if it's dedicating more resources to the run game, if you're the Gophers, you got to do everything in your power to limit this run game. Plain and absolutely simple. Okay? Cade Pieper, Logan Jones, Bo Stevens, Jennings Dunker, they're all freaking hosses up front. They can flat out push people around. Can Minnesota play on the other side of the line of scrimmage? Can they halt this Iowa run game? They are certainly going to have to. The Gophers are graded 110th against the run according to Pro Football Focus, even though they're giving up less than 100 yards per game. Sometimes those PFF figures may not be totally on board with what's actually happening. But tough, physical, defensive game. Who can hold on just enough and who can take care of the football? Like, turnovers could be huge. When you have longer drives that take more time off the clock and scoring is at a premium and possessions are at a premium, when you give those possessions away, you give one possession away in this game, it could feel like the world. Whereas if you have a shootout that kind of goes back and forth, you feel like you can respond from a one-possession game. All right, folks, it is time for predictions in the mid-afternoon window here. Let's go back to that game in Seattle. I believe that the secondary for the Huskies can match up better against Illinois' receivers than Illinois' defensive backs against Washington's wide receivers as well in this contest. I think you're going to see both teams be able to move the ball up and down and up and down the field in this contest. I give the home team the edge in this one. Give me Washington 31-27, but at 4.5, this is slightly an Illinois Fighting Illini cover. I just think with what Boston provides and Roebuck and Williams throwing the ball and what Illinois has given up in the passing game, I just think that's going to be maybe too much to overcome in this matchup for a ranked Illinois team. You know it's going to go under. You know it's going to be defensive. You know it's going to be physical. I just think it's going to come down to a special teams type of play, maybe even a Caden Weegan big play and like a reverse or something for Iowa. Give me the Hawkeyes. I think Iowa's playing really good football right now, even though Minnesota's playing good football. Give me Iowa 20, Minnesota 14 in this matchup. Boy, I can't wait for those two helmets, for those two uniforms, for those two logos to go at it. When you see the M and you see the Tiger Hawk, you know there's going to be some hitting going on. And there certainly is going to be some hitting going on out there.